What is up, everybody? Welcome to week 5 of the Bestial Frenzies podcast. I'm here with my Bestial Frenzy, Andy. Hi, Andy. How are you doing?
Hey, I'm doing well. I'm here with my bestial frenzy, Theo.
Whoa, it's crazy. Uh, it's been a
Hmm.
week. It's been a week in the world of
In a
Grand
week. It's been
Archive.
a week and a day. We're technically a day late, but we had a lot to do. There's a lot of funny business to do.
A lot of
So
funny business. Busy, 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 busy. Honestly, pretty tame week from the news standpoint. There's like nothing. I mean, they spoiled a couple more cards. You can go find that on Siladar's Twitter or in the main Discord. Um, and I think really the only big thing is that upcoming, I think scheduled for June 19th, they said they're releasing an article of the ban and restricted announcement. What do you think
yeah,
about that?
I would be so incredibly surprised if they decide to actually ban or restrict anything. Nothing in this game right now has remotely the power level that deserves a ban. Um, I think this is really just an announcement to set the precedent for what announcements are. Like they need to say like, okay, it's not like they're going to on the first ban restriction announcement be like, okay, we're banning everything and this is how we're doing it. They're going to kind of outline it's like this is what we're looking for in terms of a card that we might ban, and then they'll say that, and then so in the future if they do have a problem they can do it. But I don't think there's anything at the power level that needs a ban right now, and or a restriction for that matter. What do you think, Theo?
Yeah, I agree. I think it's mostly an announcement that there is a ban list, that there will be a ban list, and that's sort of how they'll be handling like power level and like balancing the format. Some games choose rotation, some games choose ban list. Um, I think it's mostly just
Hmm.
saying this is how we're doing this. Probably as their sort of like first things on the ban list, which don't even really count, but I think they will officially put in the two sealed only cards on the
Mhm.
list. Just because the only place that actually says that they're not legal for standard play is just on like the product notes. So actually having an official thing saying like you can't play these cards in standard. But other than those two, I also don't think there's anything that's going to actually get hit this early on. I mean, we don't even have a single like major tournament to go off of. There's been no store championships, no regionals, no majors, no nothing. It's like it would almost be silly to hit something before your tournament season starts.
Yeah, and like there hasn't been a ban in this game yet. The game hasn't been out for a month. Like I think the closest thing we have to a ban is what they did with Spirit Blade and Soul, where they kind of changed the rules of the allies a little bit to where it's like they can attack as allies because they initially what was it? They didn't lose durability.
Yeah, it initially didn't lose durability, so the Onso plus Dispersion combo hit like for 7 extra damage or
So it's
something.
actually a nerf, but it was really just a rule change to kind of clarify how that stuff works in the future. I mean, maybe we see something like that, maybe we don't. I don't know, but I don't think an outright ban is even on the table.
I definitely agree with you. I think even like that was even I don't know they considered it what an errata to like the rules, not even the text of the card.
Yeah,
Um,
no, it wasn't even an errata. It was just kind of they changed how
yeah,
that worked. And man, I don't even know if that's going to be like something they'd even consider for any of this. Like people, Dungeon Guide is the one. Dungeon Guide is the boogeyman right now. But even still, I think we went from like a meta where Lorraine is super powerful, Lorraine is everything, and then Arcane Rye won the marketplace tournament, and now all of a sudden Rye is a little bit of the boogeyman. So it's like I don't think I can trust necessarily how the community has developed its opinions on these kind of things because there's just not enough data.
yeah, and I think like I've heard I've heard shouts for a lot of cards that you just see randomly people are like ban this card, ban this card, ban this card, and somehow they're just always cards from whatever deck won the last tournament. It's like ban Ascension, ban Ghost of Pendragon, ban Arcane Disposition, ban Reckless Conversion, ban. It's like
We see it all.
just ban
This
every
is
single card, ban all the
this is the
cards.
nature of trading cards. Really, it's like it's just ban ban ban. It's all reactive. It's like taking a step back and really evaluating everything in with all of the data around it is not something that like a lot of people are good at anything. I mean, I'm not great at certain things, but I only look at cards all day. So like I kind of have a little bit of an idea of that kind of stuff, and like
Hmm.
playing the meta, playtesting a bunch with you and everyone, and having had so many games under our belts, like nothing super powerful. I mean, if you ban something now, I think it's setting just like a really bad precedent.
Hmm. Yeah,
And
it is a
in
little bit of a
general,
bad look if you ban something before before like your
for the
events
first
happen,
tournament,
right?
like
It's like
it's like
yeah,
go
it
on,
just looks
sorry.
bad. No, it's just like it just kind of it just leaves a bad taste in the player's mouth. It kind of makes them think like, well, if they're willing to just kind of like drop that randomly before stuff happens, like what's the rules for what can and can't get banned and when and like all this stuff. Like I think this announcement is just going to say we're having a ban list, we'll update it this many times a year, uh and this is how we're going to communicate these things, and that's it. I really think there's
Yeah,
nothing beyond the announcement than that.
yeah. I think the devs have done a great job of how the first set has developed. Like so many decks are viable, and so many things are still fairly unexplored as well. Like doing banning something when something doesn't need to be banned, just not good. Like if you're really thinking DG should be banned, maybe take a step back and think, what does DG do, and what decks use it, and like what would happen if Dungeon Guy got banned? Because let's say Dungeon Guy did get banned, maybe level 3 is just too slow all of a sudden,
Hmm.
and now rush decks are too good, or maybe like Lorraine just can't get over the hump of Riot anymore.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
it's
I
not that
think.
Dungeon Guide is gone and the rest of the format's okay. It's like Dungeon Guide is gone and it's a brand new format.
Yeah, yeah, and I think it's still just too early to like make format warping decisions like that. I think they definitely should be giving everybody time to sort of develop the decks and like really push for what the meta is going to look like. Um, you know, Once people sit down and start testing everything in paper, there's a lot of decks that just are underdeveloped. I don't want to say like undiscovered because like there's only so many combinations you can do with
Mhm.
elements and champions, and it's not like no one has ever tried it before. It's just that there are a lot more people playing like Wind and Fire Lorraine than there are playing, let's say, like Water Rye, right? And so there's going to be less new stuff discovered for those other decks, and if you just start banning stuff now, it's like it sort of invalidates a lot of the time, the testing that people have put into some of those decks so far. So um, that's all I really have to say about that.
Not to mention bands have like a really big cascade effect where like generally for games, and I'm not sure how it is for this game. I'm pretty sure set 2 is already done and they're testing set 3. But like set 2 and set 3 are being developed with what the meta currently is right now. Like if you take Dungeon Guide out, if you ban Dungeon Guide right now, set 2 is like messed up. Like you
Yeah,
you
true.
can't go back from that.
Yeah, yeah. It's like and maybe they're while they're testing set three, they're like maybe testing with some theoretical possible bans in mind. Like they're like, well,
Mhm.
what if by the time this rolls around, like this card isn't played anymore, or something like that. But like stuff like that it's just like it's so hard to plan for that when there isn't like a set in stone competitive meta developed from like actual events.
Yeah, and I don't think anything needs to be banned right now. I'm just going to keep
Yeah.
repeating that. But also, like, this is just the card game climate is a little different than it was say a decade ago. Where if maybe it's more than a decade now, but like, but if like back in the day when Magic banned something in Standard, it was such a big deal. It was like, what did they do? How did they screw this up so bad? But now it's like I think people are a little more understanding with it. Where it's like if something gets banned, maybe not in the first set, but like maybe in set 2, set 3, etc. It's like people are a lot more forgiving to like they're more understanding. It's like okay, the developers are human; they made a mistake, and it's not the end of the world. Where back in the day, it's like when they printed, oh, what was it like? Did Squadron Hawk get banned? What got with Jace the Mind Sculptor? I can't remember what got banned from the format, but it was like, how was this allowed? How did they do this?
Right, right,
And
right.
now it's like acceptable. And I don't think like if the devs ban something in set 3, it's the end of the world. But if they ban something in set 1, I think it's going to raise a lot more questions about the viability of the game itself.
Hmm. Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that. I don't think there's any other like major news that came out this past week. That the big one that everyone's looking forward to is the ban stuff, but I really don't even think that's going to be that big of an announcement. So
Yeah.
like,
We'll talk about store championships next week because those applications start on the 19th. But
mhm.
besides that, I don't think there's really any big news.
Yeah, yeah. So why don't we go ahead and talk about some meta manipulation? Let's move into
Yeah,
the deck of the week here. The last Thursday, how many people did we have playing in the tournament last Thursday?
I believe it was 22.
22. And the undefeated deck at the end of the night was a Fire Lorraine list.
Nice.
The boogeyman, I guess. And it was sort of your standard run of the mill one. It was different than the other Fire Lorraine that 4-0'd the launch tournament. Because this one was playing only one in Soul and like mostly playing like an Ascension package. Like that was kind of like the game plan, and Soul was sort of like your fallback plan. Um,
Whose
but
deck was it, by the way?
what was that?
Whose deck was it? I don't know if I have it in front of me.
I also don't actually have the list in front of me because
Here,
I'm
we'll keep talking and let me see if I can pull it up.
yeah. Uh, but something that I was thinking about, I was like, a lot of people are saying like Fire Lorraine, Fire Lorraine, Fire Lorraine, it's the best deck, it's too good, blah blah blah, whatever. It's like this is actually only the second tournament in like a month and a half that Fire Lorraine has actually won. The other being the launch tournament. Every other week has been not Fire Lorraine. So like that's just another example to me of just it. There isn't a clear best deck that just wins everything. You know.
Local metas develop different.
Mhm.
So what meta is in Australia and what the meta is in SoCal is going to be different than what the online meta is or what the St. Louis meta is. So and other decks and other players are going to come out on top just because the best player at your local only plays or like just keeps winning with Fire Lorraine or Win Lorraine doesn't necessarily mean like Water Xander isn't a good deck.
Yeah, no, that's true. It's also like player skill. Like if there's one player who's just a different caliber and they can just win with whatever deck they play, it'd be a little bit disingenuous to just say every week, "Oh, that deck is the best deck in the format because you 4-0'd a local with it."
Okay, the winner of the event, by the way, was Okage. Okage Business. I think that's just like I'd be really surprised if that was their actual name, but that's like their screen name, Okage Business. But I really like their list. I think it's more heavy fire, less heavy on Crux. It feels like,
Mhm.
and we'll have the list, the link in the description. It's also a really big metagame list. Like they only have one flame sweep in the main board, so it's like they're not expecting to see a lot of creature based stuff. They're playing for like they're cycling through their deck, with cremation rituals and creative shocks and hasty messengers, and then they get to three, it's like they ascension and then they'll crux site. But they're trying to win the game with a lot of rending flames and a lot of
Yeah.
devastating blows. And the one main board Varuk's really cool too.
Yeah, I was gonna say like I think the heavier fire build definitely lends itself to like leaning on rending flames. Like a lot of times, some other Lorien builds will like rending maybe once a game, just for big damage. But that build really seems like instead of going to level 2 and sweeping and drawing a billion cards, it's like I'm gonna go to level 2 and I'm gonna rending flames for 12 damage,
Yeah.
and that's sometimes better than drawing one or two cards.
And when you're not expecting, a lot of ally based decks in the meta, like if you just want to go direct and swing at them and that's the way to kill, there's not a reason to have a lot of flame sweeps in your deck.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I mean, I think it's definitely like one of those meta calls, and also it's becoming a thing now where people have played against Lorraine so much that they're starting to play around the sweep. So they're like, well, if I see you're probably about to go to level 2, I'm probably gonna not go too wide on my board. I'm gonna hold a bunch of allies in hand, and so a lot of Lorraine players are like, well, if I'm not gonna draw like 3 cards, I probably shouldn't go to 2, but this list is really just saying like I'm gonna go to 2 and I'm gonna smack you.
Yeah, the thread of the flame sweep itself is almost as powerful as the flame sweep itself.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think it's definitely one of those lists that develops just like looking into the field, and you see sort of what you're up against and what people are playing, and you build for that. I think that's a very similar to concept to why the Arcane Ride that won the marketplace tournament was playing Deflecting Edge in main, is just respecting, cards like Rending Flames and just like Lorraine in general. Is like, you're gonna attack me a lot, and I'm gonna need to eat some damage before I can pop off. And those sort of like developments within decks are like really really interesting to see, like what you're expecting and how you're playing against those things, and like what cards you choose to put in your deck that maybe you wouldn't put in otherwise, or like what cards that you take out of your deck that seem like you need them, just for a meta.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how Store Championship and regionals develops that meta further, where it's like you have a lot less ability to metagame your locals.
Yeah, no, that's true. When you're like building for a, it's not like a blind meta because everyone still has a pretty similar idea of like which decks are good, but if I'm building for, let's say, like our Yeti paper local on Saturday, right? And I'm like, we've got a couple players who they have one deck. That's all they play. And there's a small enough player base that the chance that I play against those players is relatively high. So if I know that six people are on this one deck and that's the only deck they play, I can change my list a little bit to counter that deck. But when you're looking at a regional with like 100 plus people and a lot of them are traveling in, like you sort of have to guess what techs you think other people are playing and what you want to play against those, and you have to infer a lot of information. So those lists will probably end up looking like different than what local lists will look like.
Yeah, because at a regional, I don't think I would play one Rending Flame just because Rending Flame is really powerful, and I don't know if I'm going to go against like a Fire Xander or something. Where if I play at the online local, I'm pretty certain I'm not going to play against them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but
But
yeah, yeah. All in all, a very interesting list. Very, very, very cool stuff. I really like seeing these like minute decision making things and how they affect the overall decks. Um, but I think the more exciting thing to talk about this week than just another Fire Lorraine deck is definitely the market stuff. You got some interesting stuff, interesting stats for us this week on market.
yeah, so I did a really deep dive into what the market is doing for Grand Archive. So let's hit off the bat. Let's do what we do. Let's talk about the expected value of boxes. And the expected value of boxes is down this week, and it's down like a decent amount. Last week we were hitting about 140, 142. We're at $130 this week, and I think a lot of that is just the market kind of realizing where it is. Like it's not going up and up and up anymore. It's kind of like people are kind of getting their cards. The player base, the growth is slowing a little bit, absolutely, because there's not a lot of product out there, and it's just like cards, like a lot of rares, a lot of SRs are going down from like $8 to $6, and rares are going from like $4 to $3. It's just little bits here and there to where it's bringing it down. And it's kind of settling where it is. When you have boxes at $120 still, it being at $130, your expected value is still absolutely incredible.
Mhm.
And over time, those two should, you know, it's not that they should get equal. The expected value should just be lower than the price you can buy a booster box. But $130, it's still something we have to look at. And one of the reasons I did a lot of this data I'm looking at, so I went through and I looked at on the past 7 days. So this is from 6:15 to or 6/9 to 6:15. So 7 days. Didn't want to do today because the days we're in the middle of the day. But I went through TCG Player and I looked at every single card that's sold and the quantities of it, and I think it was really interesting. And we're gonna go through that. So let's start at the very top and let's start signatures, and then I'll do all the numbers at the end. So the signatures, we had no Merlin sell, no Tristan sell. We had two Allen sell, surprisingly, and a Mordred. The fact that any of them sold, I think, is incredible because they're expensive and the game is still new. There's not a lot of people just wanting to bling out their Allen deck or their Mordred deck or their
Right.
Merlin deck. Like, these aren't mainline champions. These are just kind of extras. And I only went through Alter on these. I didn't look at first edition. I didn't look at like the starter decks or anything. So when I started this, I actually got a little scared because one of the things we do is we look at how many of each item like sell per day. and it gives a pretty good, idea of how much is selling, how many people are getting into it. And for the first time in a while, the Grand Crusaders ring was below 1 per day.
Ooh.
So it was 5 altar rings sold, which was a little scary. And I was like, oh no, am I going to look through this? I'm going to see a bunch of zeros, like a bunch of stuff didn't sell. Really bad for the market. And I don't really have a good explanation why only 5 Grand Crusaders rings sold. I mean, a lot of this is just going to be speculation, but like, it's a $50 card. People are getting what they want. The player base growth is slowing because there's not altar boxes available to people. And, we see that just being what it is. It's still, if on average 5 Grand Crusaders rings sell a week, that's still, 260 Grand Crusaders rings selling in a year? On TCG Player, that's pretty solid. One of the things we figured out with Flesh and Blood, and when Yeti Gaming jumped into Flesh and Blood doing that a lot, is for a very long period of time. There's more sets, so it's not anymore. But from like before Monarch released all the way to Everfest, there was a period of like 3 months where at least one of each legendary sold every day, which is crazy. I mean, that's a lot. It was 365 a year of each one at the very minimum. So 5 Grand Crusaders rings isn't at that point of 1 per day, but it's not the end of the world, because if you extend, this is also just a small snapshot. If you extend this back 2 weeks, I'm pretty sure it was like 18 Grand Crusaders rings sold. If you extend it back 4 weeks for a month, it's like 65 Grand Crusaders rings sold. So it's, keep in mind when I give you these numbers, this is only a small snapshot of what we're looking at, but you had to have a cutoff somewhere, and doing it in 7 days in a week is still a pretty good reflection of what the market will look like, at least as of recent.
Yeah,
So there's only 5 Grand Crusaders rings sold.
one of the
But there were
interesting things about Grand Crusaders rings specifically, is that it's one of those cards that, like, because of its price point, people are, and because it's a one-off index, right? It's like people who are buying the altar ring are probably buying it to play it, and each player only needs one ring,
only needs
and
one.
and then you can switch them between decks. And like some of the other URs, like if it's a $2 card and I'm building two, arcane decks, let's say, like I could buy 2 tomes, like that. That's not too expensive, but I'm not gonna buy a new ring for every single deck. So I think as the growth of the player base slows down a little bit, it's like people who need rings is also going to slow down a little bit.
Yeah, no, I think that's also a great example. You said price, because as we look through these numbers, I'm going to give some examples where we will see that more expensive cards a lot of the time will have less sales than cheaper cards, because it's a lot. The example I'm going to give you right away: Grand Crusaders ring 5 sold this week. Gaia's Blessing, which is like a $2 UR, sold 23 copies. Especially if you're just getting in the game, maybe your local scene isn't huge yet. Maybe it's only like 6, 7, maybe 8 people. You might not want to invest $50 in a Grand Crusade ring, but a $2 Gaia's Blessing that you can still play in your Sylvie deck, absolutely.
Yeah.
And we're just gonna keep talking. Not a lot of UR foils sold. We had 2 sell this week. 1 Majestic Spirit Crest, 1 Gaia's Blessing. We're gonna see that. The more expensive cards that sell, the less are gonna sell. One thing that I think is a really good thing for the market is there were 413 SRs sold this week. Pretty good. It's not bad. As we look, like the more expensive ones that are seen less, like Light Weavers are sold. Only 3 sold this week. That's not a playset. But on something like Bestial Frenzies, 25 sold this week.
Let's go support the podcast, baby.
Yeah, Gildas was actually the most sold SR at 29. But we had 18 souls, 7 Beseech, 7 Ghosts. It's like averaging at least 1 per day. Foil SRs, and I'm not actually gonna go through all these numbers. I'm just gonna give blank things at the end, because I'm not gonna go through, tell you how many of each common sold and stuff. But there were the one thing, and we're gonna go back to this later, is 12 foil SRs sold this week total. We're gonna go back to that. I just want you to keep that number in your mind. So lots of stuff sold this week. So in terms of total cards sold, on TCG Player from 6.9 to 6.15. Do you have a guess how many cards sold?
Like how many total cards?
How many non-foils sold and how many foils?
Total
I want
non.
you to do a guess. Game for the people at home.
If I'm in a single week, and then I guess this is also like knowing how many SRs sold roughly. I'm gonna say, I'm gonna say there were 900 commons, non-commons, alter, non-foils sold, or just like just in general, 900 cards. That's
900 total cards. So
yeah,
every the commons, everything.
yeah.
Okay. How many foils do you think sold?
It's 20. I guess
Of everything. You
I
think
guess
20
yeah,
altar foils?
20 foils. That's all. That's all I'm giving. I'm going light this
Okay.
week because I feel like
Okay.
you wouldn't make
So
me guess if it was like something that was pretty normal.
it depends. Like there's not really a lot to go off of because I haven't done this before. But total number of non-foils sold this week, commons, uncommons, rares, SRs, URs, was
Yeah.
2,672 total cards. The foils was 248.
All right, I was undervaluing it a bit.
Yeah, so a total of
So much.
2,920. I really hope that addition adds up because I just did it really quick. I didn't think to do it beforehand. But so I think that's for a brand new game where the player base is clearly slowing just a little bit. I think that number is great. I think the number for non-foil specifically is really, really, really good because it's showing people are buying every. Did I say one of every card sold?
You did not say that yet, but that's
Yeah,
an
so
interesting
that
fact.
was one thing I was really surprised of every single non-foil. I'm not counting the signatures, I'm not counting the foils because obviously they can't be. But on the non-foils, at least one copy of every card sold this week, even spirits, even champions. And I was
Interesting.
really shocked by that because that is not always true for especially new card games.
Yeah, that's really interesting because there's a lot of those cards that are just like not playable, not going in
And
decks. So it's like
a lot that are just in starter decks. Like
that's true.
one jewel of or one beast bond year sold, one beast bound paw sold. So some of them did sneak by with one, but at least one copy of everything sold. And there have been weeks, I will say, that this is not true. But for this very specific week, it is true. And usually it's a vast majority of cards sell. If there is a week where cards don't sell, just by looking through, it's maybe a handful, like 20 tops. But I think it's a really good sign for the game that there is interest in everything right now, at least in some capacity.
So it's really interesting. Like, it's really interesting. Like, do you think is that someone completing their non-foil master set who's like picking up one of the random cards, or like what? Like why do you think that some of these cards have like exactly one sale over the week? You know,
Uh, it's probably that people getting into the game because a lot of the one of sales were regalia. So it is probably someone just buying their one copy for their one deck.
that's true. Or I guess someone could just be like, I'm gonna buy one of each regalia so I can build every deck because I have one of all of them. That's all I'll ever need.
Yeah, I mean, there was I think the one copy, there was one rebellious bowl sold.
Poor
But I
guy.
think it's really interesting because even like the most junk of junk cards, there's at least a little demand for it, at least a little bit. But
Yeah.
I want to get into the foils real quick because we talk a lot on this podcast. I think I've done every week. We talk about the expected value of alter.
Hmm.
And if you're a store, especially if you're buying in cards and stuff, one thing that is more important than anything is liquidity of the stuff. It doesn't matter if the expected value of a booster box is like $300 if you have to wait 2 months to sell it. And we do see things like that where, as a player, it doesn't really matter if you need everything. But as a seller, it really matters, especially if you're a game store, especially if you're looking to carry Grand Archive and buy it because you're going to resell it. And I hate saying the game MetaZoo, but MetaZoo has the if you want something to see a game that has terrible liquidity, it is all of MetaZoo, and all that is just a general problem for a lot of new games. So when we talk about 250 foils selling in a week, a vast majority of those foils are common. So
Mhm.
not a vast majority. I'm sorry, 117 foil commons. I got ahead of myself on that. But it
Less
is
than
more
half.
than any other rarity. And we can see, I'm actually just going to give you the numbers because it gets smaller with each step up in rarity. So 117
Mhm.
foil commons sold,
Yep.
61 uncommons, 53 rares, 12 SRs, 2 URs, 3 signatures. And I kind of want to talk a little bit about why. 250 over the course of a week in a set might not sound like a lot to people. And I'm not sure it sounds like a lot to me. I don't really have anything to base this off of, like to compare it to, not to base it off, but to compare it to. Like I don't know if it was the last week it was more, last week it was more. I know from selling on our website yetigaming.com, which is the best place to get singles for this game, by the way,
True. Can confirm.
that our foils sell pretty here and there. Like we probably move like $600 worth of foils a week, which is fairly good, honestly. But we don't have our inventory on there. We have or on TCG Player. We have it on our website. And I'm only going off TCG Player, but I'm actually going to get to my point instead of RAM. So 200 and whatever number I said, 248 foils sold.
Sounds right.
Whatever number
It's
I
roughly
said.
250. That's the number that I have in my head. I rounded it.
But we see as the foils get more expensive, less people are willing to buy it. And
Mhm.
I think there's more reason for that than price. So we saw 2 foil URs sell this week. Obviously, the people who are in the market for a $50 foil Majestic Spears Crest is going to be strictly less than the people in the market for a $400 Grand Crusaders ring, just off of price alone.
True.
But when we get to SRs, 12 foil SRs sold. That's not a lot. That's less than one per card. That's less than half half a copy per card in a week. And if you go through all the SRs and all like the rares and even a lot of the uncommons, one of the big problems you start to see is there's not quantity of any of these cards.
Mm.
There
Yeah.
there are some uncommons, rares, SRs where there might be one copy list. Like the ability to buy a playset of any given foil SR, I actually think is not possible from one seller right now. I don't think there's a seller that has 4 foil of any SR listed. And maybe they listed before this video got posted and after I did my research. But that's a really big problem when it comes to people buying stuff because
It's
there's
true.
nothing worse when you buy 4 copies of a card from 4 different sellers, especially in a brand new trading card game, and then one of them's like, "Oh, I'm sorry, I don't have it," or it gets lost in the mail or something.
Yeah.
And that's a symptom of the game being new, and that's a symptom of not enough like actual product out there. But I absolutely 100%, and we see this with everything, that is hindering the sales of foils in general. Not being able to buy all from one seller, and in some cases, just not being able to buy a playset at all.
Hmm.
Like, oh, what was the card earlier? I think it was Hasty Messenger. There's one foil on TCG Player. There's a single copy.
Dang.
So it's like you can't buy a playset if you want. Even if you have 2 of them, you can't buy 2 of them.
Yeah, that's why. I mean, especially like from the perspective of somebody who wants to buy foils to put in their decks, it's like if you can't buy 4 of them, you're not going to buy one of them because you're just going to try to get them all at the same time.
And
And
go on. Sorry.
no, I was just that is mostly the point. It's like that's frustrating for players who are like looking for foils because some people really like the high rarity cards and the foils in this game look really nice. So I understand why people would want those cards, and it can be frustrating from a player's perspective. Just be like, I don't want to get 4 different envelopes that come in different intervals of time. The condition might be different based on the standards of each
Mhm.
store, and it's like everything is different. It can be frustrating.
Yeah, and I feel as the game progresses and the game gets older, there's more alter stocks, there's more set 2, there's more set 3, that this problem is going to go away. But I think right now we are in the perfect storm of there not being a huge amount of demand for foils, especially alter foils, because one, there's Kickstarter. So foils aren't even the highest rarity for Alter.
True.
The Kickstarter foils, those are the highest rarity. Two, there's not a lot of stock.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, you can't buy a playset of a lot of these cards. It's literally not possible. And if you can't bling out your entire deck, there are some people who won't bling out any of their deck.
True.
And I mean, also the game is new, and I keep harping on that. But if you're jumping into a game and you like, especially if you're 2 weeks in, even if you're a month in, you got in day one, you still might not know exactly what deck you want to play. So it's a really big investment to bling out a deck or get bling for your Lorraine deck if you might realize you don't like that deck or you want to play Rye instead.
Yeah, no, that's true. It's like there's it's still so early that you'll have a couple people who are like, this is my deck. I'm gonna play this deck. I found my deck. Like you and your Water Xander list. Uh, but even then, like there's no way you're finding a set of Lightweaver's Assault foils for that deck. So why even try to bling it out?
Yeah, and it's a double-edged sword. Also foils are 1 in 8 packs in this game. But if you have them 1 in every pack, a lot of these problems go away. But the big thing that goes away is the value of the cards themselves.
Mm-hmm.
If
Yeah,
you have 1 in every pack, yeah, sellers are going to have 4, 6, 8. People might be buying more. But also, the complete value of your game gets completely devalued. Like,
yeah,
$60 of your expected value is still tied up in foils in this game. If foils are 1 per pack, the expected value of your game is probably closer to $100 or maybe 105. Yeah, that's more in line with what you would expect it to be, but also I think that makes the game less appealing to people. So this is just something that is a bump in the road in terms of foils. It's not that people don't want foils. People want foils. 250 foils selling is still 250 foils selling in a week. That's a lot. If this game was dead, that would be 10. That'd be 20. Like you said, you guessed 20. You thought that the game was dead.
I
But
just thought it had to be something drastic for you to make such a big deal out of it.
I think it's important for people to also see 250 sold and then the context behind that. Because people want them with the limited availability out there. People still do want them. It's just everything is going against foils right now.
Yeah, and
But
like
at the same time, it's not like foils are 50 cents.
yeah, no, it's
Foils are
true, and like
$3,
that.
$5, $20.
That's the thing that happens with a lot of the other games that have one foil in every pack, two foils in every pack. Is like they're not cool anymore. Like you, they're like I'm thinking of Pokemon specifically. There are some people who specifically choose not to play the regular foil versions of cards because they're like, meh, the
Doesn't
commons look
matter.
better. And in this game, like I think they did a really good job of making like the foils are chase cards. Even a foil common is still like a bit of a chase card. And if you have more foils, then that does definitely diminish the value of the box, diminish the value of the foils, diminish the value of everything, and it diminishes the values of event packs too. If the big thing about event packs is that like 50% chance at a foil in a gold pack, you're like that's crazy. That's like opening 8 altar packs.
Yeah. But 250, I just want to harp again. This might not sound like a lot, but with the context of everything else that's going on with Alter, with the supplies and everything, I think that number is massive. I was surprised. I thought it was lower. I thought it was going to be lower before I did everything. But what this shows me is I want more foils. I want to do more foils. I want to sell more foils.
I want to put more foils in my deck.
I like. I want to get play sets of foils. So if someone wants a play set of hasty messengers, they're able to buy a play set of hasty messengers.
Yeah, no, that is true. People will almost always prefer to buy their entire sets of cards from one seller because you just want to get them all at the same time.
Oh, yeah, I mean, there's a rule. Like, if you it's not necessarily on TCG Player that you want to price match whatever the lowest listing is. If you have a playset, you want to price match or go a little undercut what the lowest playset is.
Yeah.
But I think that's interesting. If you have any questions, I hope I explained it well. There was a lot of information. If you have any questions, throw them in the comments. I'll try to answer them. What do you think? Do you think 250 foils is a lot? Do you think it's not very much?
Yeah, I mean, it's a higher number than I was expecting. I think, like you were saying, like even like I guessed 20 just to say a ridiculous lowball number, but like I know that foils, especially on TCG Player, like they're scarce. Like I've looked up foils before because like one of my favorite decks to play is Arcane Rye, and I'm like pushing pretty close to getting a full foil playset of all my Arcane cards, and so I've browsed TCG Player for foil cards before, and it's tough to find all the ones you want at like prices that you want them at, right? And so like I think 250 sounds like a good number considering how rare foils are, and also like how expensive anything above a common foil just like on the low end is. I think 250 is a good number, honestly.
Mhm.
But is that all we got for market stuff? Or you got any other like random wacko stats to throw out?
Not really, like nothing really dropped. It was just kind of a kind of a little bit of across the board depression and stuff.
Me too, man. Me too.
We can play some games. Do you want to guess which commons was the most sold?
The most sold common?
Most sold common.
Um, in Just Alter.
Just alter.
Just
Yeah.
Alter. Um, let's see. Uh, I'm trying to think of someone that's not in the starter decks that is just a common, but is still like a staple card in a lot of decks.
Shocking. It was in the starter decks.
Oh, it was? Okay, okay, okay. I'm gonna guess Idle Thoughts.
It was Idle Thoughts. It was 59 copies.
Okay, all right. The starter deck one was definitely a good hint because I was like I was gonna guess Idle Thoughts, then I was like, well, that card came in the starter deck, so some
Yeah,
of its
I know.
sales
I
might be
was
starter deck
surprised.
copies. But
What do you think the most sold uncommon was?
all right,
This one was not in the starter deck.
this one's not in the starter deck. Okay, that's helpful because I was going to guess a Creative Shock, but um, let's see.
Grave Shock was number 2.
Ugh. See, I'm close on some of these, but most sold uncommon. Um, I'm gonna go ahead and guess. Let's say Hasty Messenger.
It was Hasty Messenger at 53 copies.
Oh, I'm on fire.
You want to guess the rare?
Oh my gosh.
We're gonna go down the line and see if you can guess them.
Uh, rare. I mean, like the most obvious choice is Dungeon Guide.
You'll never get this one.
I'll never get this one, so it's something
Never.
weird. I'm like also like drudging my brain for
I
like
don't think Dungeon Guy was in the top 10.
yeah, it's just
It was
expensive. It's just
13
like
copies sold this week, but it was not in the top 10.
yeah, that makes sense. It's still expensive, so there's not gonna be a lot of copies going of it. I'm gonna guess for rare. Let's say Erratic Bolt.
No, it was called the pack at
Oh,
30.
I would never guess in that. That card's booty.
I already told you SR was
Yeah,
guildless.
SR was gold, which
I
actually a
already
little bit
told you.
surprising. And then
I was told you guys blessing at 23 was
yeah,
the most. So
all right.
there you go.
So I missed the rare, but there I was never guessing Call the Pack. That's that. Someone's
See,
cooking.
so I saw that and I was like, oh, because I was going alphabetical order, and I was like, okay, maybe Sylvies are just hunt. Like no, like I think the least sold rare was Invoke
Crystal of
Dominance.
Argus. What?
Copies.
Which one was it?
Invoke Dominance.
Oh, okay, all right.
It's not like people just wanted Sylvie cards. Call the Pack's cool though.
No, it's a cool card. It's just like there's not a lot of Sylvie support right now, but you know, that's fine.
But yeah, that's all I got. You got the numbers. Hopefully, I explained it well. I was kind of just spewing it out there.
Yeah, it was a lot of numbers all at once, but yeah, I think you did a pretty good job. But as always, if you guys have questions, you can leave those questions in the comments down below, and we will do our best to answer them if we have answers to them. Uh, that's all I got. As always, if you want to play in our weekly tournaments, we'll have a link to join the Discord down in the description, as well as a link to the Yeti website if you want to find the best place for singles in this game. All of our foils are on Yeti, yetigaming.com, and not on our TCG player. So if you're looking for foils, That's definitely the place to go for them. You can also sign up for our regionals on YetiGaming.com. We still have some player slots for our regionals in August, and that's the place to register.
Hell yeah.
I think that's all we got this week. So
Awesome. Thanks, guys, for being here. Have a good one.
see ya.